everybody, welcome back if you're new here. My name is Becca and today I'm going to be talking to you guys about my October reading plans. Now I do feel kind of hesitant to call this video a TBR, even though there are going to be 4 books on here that I'm going to talk to you guys about that I'm definitely reading in the month of October. But I've said it a million times, this year has not been a good reading year for me, and we've discussed it time and time again over the last like 6 months. My mental health has been shocking. I haven't been reading a lot. In September, I have just finished my 3rd book of the month, which I've never read less than like 5 books in a month, and at the time of filming this there are 4 days left of September and I don't even know why I have barely read anything. It was the month of my readathon. I thought I was going to read a lot more. I mentally want to read, but then by the time I get around to sitting down with a book, I'm pretty much just staring at a wall and doing not a lot of anything. So instead of bringing you guys a list of like 10 books, instead of keep making these TBR videos with a normal size stack of books on my normal reading pace that I'm no longer achieving, I'm just going to set myself the 4 books that I have to read that are all kind of like obligated reads, and I'm gonna mood read. We're gonna see what happens if I mood read and see whether that does anything for my reading or whether I'm broken at this point. I think I'm going to carry on this energy for the rest of the year. There is going to be a Bookopoly TBR that covers November and December, but you guys know if you've been with me for years, November and December is very loose with what I hold myself to actually reading, because in terms of candles it's actually from September all the way through to halfway through December. It's the busiest time of the year for me, so I don't hold it against myself if I don't manage to read as much as I usually would. So we're just gonna see what happens for the rest of the year, and I don't even want to tell you guys a hypothetical list of books of like, oh, I'll read this book if I get time, and then when I finish that, if I still have time, I'll read this book. Because even though I'm telling you that I might read it, in my brain that is a list of books that I have to read step by step before I can pick up something that I may be in the mood for. And when I've been telling you guys ever that I'm gonna mood read, I'm never actually mood reading, because I have this whole stack of books that I need to read. I've got a ton of arcs because I haven't been reading much. I've been terrible with arcs this year. I also have a ton of like vlog ideas that I've wanted to make, but because I've been reading so slowly, I've never gotten around to them. So after we've talked about the 4 books that I'm definitely reading in the month, I'm going to talk a little bit about the kind of directions I might go in and like what I might do, but it's really going to be me deciding in the moment, and I'm not going to be naming any specific books because I don't want them to be added subconsciously to this mental list of books that I think I have to read, when realistically I can do whatever I want to. So the 4 books that I'm definitely going to be reading in October, 3 of them are my Inner Circle Patreon picks for I think July, September, and then I'll be picking October's book, and then I have 1 book club book. So the July Inner Circle Patreon pick is Dark Lover by J.R. Ward. This one was Marley's pick, and I haven't not read this yet because I don't want to. I'm just unnecessarily slumpy, and it's so frustrating because I actually really want to read everything right now. I'm in such a good reading mood, but I can't seem to actually read anything. So this is definitely going to be read in October. Put money on this time, guys. I'm actually going to do it. But this is the first book in a very popular paranormal romance series where each book follows a member of the Black Dagger Brotherhood. They're all vampires. This one follows Wrath, who I believe is one of the like least popular members of the Black Dagger Brotherhood. I think I've heard book 3 or 4 is the best, but I've been hearing very, very good things about this, so I've been excited to read it for a while, and I truly am excited that I finally have an opportunity to pick this book up. I just now need to actually pick this book up. The Patreon pick for September was Princess's pick, and once again, so excited to read this one. But of the 3 books that I actually read in September, one of them was like 900 pages and one of them was 650 pages. So this, which is 693 pages, was just not going to happen on top of those other 2. But this is a series that I've really wanted to read for quite some time. I've heard a lot of people say that if you like Sanderson, which I obviously do, then you are going to enjoy the Lycanius trilogy, and I have had a lot of people say that I need to read these books like pretty soon after each other, so I'm going to do my best to make these a priority and try and finish this trilogy before the end of the year. And I think that that has something to do with the like complexity and the scope of the plot and the amount of detail within these books that you are going to want to make sure that you're as fresh as possible going into the sequels. But this is, off the top of my head, when you have a fantasy synopsis for epic fantasy, it's never accurate anyway, but this is about a guy who is gifted, and this is following a war where I think they're called the Augurs, but they had some sort of like magical abilities and they were destroyed, but the people who were gifted, who have like a fraction of that ability, weren't, but they're forced to live in like a kind of slavery that is a result of this war that happened before many of them were born. That is all I know about it, but I've heard nothing but amazing things. And yeah, I remember from when I did my September TBR now, there's like no margins in this book. It's like edge to edge text, which is a little bit intimidating. I am in a really big high and epic fantasy mood though, so I'm looking forward to sinking my teeth into that one. And then the last Patreon pick that I need to read is currently a mystery because we're going to be picking it right now. So this is pretty full. Oops. Pop that one back in. If you are in the inner circle tier of my Patreon, you can recommend a book and I will pick one out of this mug every single month and aim to read it in like the 2 months that follow me picking it. The scope of genres in here is quite vast. It is predominantly romancy, whether it's contemporary romance or fantasy romance, and on the other end of that, like high and epic fantasy. So this month, I'm wanting to mood read. I'm more in the mood for high and epic fantasy than I am romance, which is a change from like the majority of this year. But I'm kind of hoping for a romance because it's a quicker read and then I can get to like mood reading a little bit faster. I think what I'm saying here is that I would be happy either way, whichever way it goes. So let's see what the pot has in store for me this month. Let's go for this one. This has literally just gone in. Wow. Gods and Monsters by Janie Marie. And I thought, when Caitlin recommended this, I thought this is such a good pick because I've wanted to read this book for such a long time. But I'm so hyped about this one. Thank you so much, Caitlin. Gods and Monsters by Janie Marie. Look at this cover. I'm just hoping that the contents of this book match this cover because look, like even the back is beautiful and all of the books in this series are equally as stunning. My only gripe with them is that they have shiny covers and I prefer myself a matte indie paperback. This one was also a gift from Nikki, so thank you so much to Nikki for gifting this to me. I am hyped. So this one it feels kind of sci-fi dystopian while also being fantasy romance, but it says when the plague of all plagues begins its destruction, it isn't a miracle cure by scientists or even our military that saves us. No, our saviors are monsters. Jane appears to be nothing special. In fact, she's a sad sight to behold. Afflicted by the sorrow of her tragic past and failing marriage, the young mother of two is as terrified as every other soul when humanity faces doom. Yet, when hope seems lost, Jane does something even her estranged husband fails to. She fights, and she's not alone. David and his companions are what our world has dismissed as mere legend. Their duty to the human race brings them across the country, and they all know it's no coincidence when they cross paths with Jane. As it happens, Jane is special. She's destined to rid the world of darkness. With monsters from every nightmare seeking her out, a noble immortal knight showing her what love truly feels like, and even more powerful beings wagering the fate of her soul, Jane will embark on an epic journey to save her family and the world. So what will happen when they realize she's the greatest monster of them all? Tell me that that does not sound good. And also something a little bit refreshing about this, the main character is somebody who is currently married. It's a failing marriage, but she's married, and she's also a mother of two, which I know that the Bitch Queen Chronicles, which I think is what the series is called, has a main character who's a mother, but that isn't fantasy romance, it's just fantasy. So I think that this is the first fantasy romance synopsis that I've read where the main character has kids and like has lived a life, is not some like naive kind of fresh-faced girl that's having the world kind of shown to her by the love interest. So I'm really hyped to see how that dynamic goes down, and I'm hopeful about this because a lot of indie books in general don't have a well-written synopsis. This synopsis seems pretty decent, so I'm hopeful, guys. I'm excited. Fingers crossed this one pulls through for me. That was an excellent pick, Caitlin. And that was actually a excellent segue into the final book that I'm going to be solidly putting on my TBR to read in October, which is Pestilence by Laura Thalassa. I have just started a brand new fantasy romance book club with my patrons called the Alpha Ho Book Club, which is very much in a similar vein as Catch Up Book Club, but with fantasy romance instead of epic fantasy. So I now have 2 book clubs, one for each of my favorite genres, but the Alpha Ho Book Club is going to be focusing on a fantasy romance series, and we will be reading 1 book a month. So the first series that we're going with is the 4 Horsemen series by Laura Thalassa. Pestilence will be October, and then the second books will be November, December, and January. And instead of having live shows for these, because obviously like depending on time zone, some people can't make them, I'm actually going to be making a book diary or like a spoilery vlog for each book in the series that we are reading. And I'm really excited that the 4 Horsemen is the first series that we're tackling, Jacqueline because I have previously read from Laura Thalassa before. She wrote one of my favorite fantasy romance series, which is the Bargainer series. So while this one has a very different vibe, I'm hoping that I'm going to really love this one as well. But the Four Horsemen series, and the reason why I said that Gods and Monsters is an excellent segue into this, is a apocalyptic series about the four horsemen of the apocalypse that come down to earth. So there's 4 books in the series. Each book is one of the four horsemen of the apocalypse, and as they are coming to like kick off the apocalypse, they all fall in love with human women. In terms of synopsis, doesn't really seem like the kind of fantasy romance that I would typically pick up, but Laura Thalassa is the reason why I have a bit of faith in this series. Like I said, I am going to be making spoilery vlogs for this for my patrons, but do not fear if you are not one of my patrons. I don't make exclusive videos for Patreon. It is more of an early access thing, as when I get to the end of the series, I'm going to be editing all of the videos together and posting them on my channel as like a spoiler vlog for the entire series. And then when we get to the end of the series as well, we are going to have like one live show on Patreon discussing the series as a whole. So this is available to all tiers. If you are interested in Patreon, the link is always in my description box. There's a whole ton of other stuff that goes on there as well, like 24-hour readathons, watch-alongs. We are at the beginning of October on the 9th, I think. We are going to do a full day binge of all of the after movies, which I'm really excited about. Those movies are terrible, but I also love them. In my top tier, you get the monthly book draw, also an exclusive live show and a monthly bookmark. There's a whole ton of stuff going on if you are interested, if you would like to support me in that way. But if not, don't worry, you will get the spoiler vlog just in 4 months time, as opposed to monthly, as like myself and my patrons all read along together. And this book was a gift from Bobby, so thank you very much, Bobby, for gifting this one to me. So these are the 4 books that I have to read in October, and I'm actually really happy about this stack. As you can see, it is fantasy / paranormal romance heavy, which I feel is in keeping with spooky season. And then we have an epic fantasy, which is the mood that I'm currently in at the minute. So in terms of what else I'm going to be reading throughout the month, I'm undecided. It's spooky season, so I kind of want to do a lot of spooky season reading, which these fantasy romances are actually really well themed to spooky season. But in the past, I've always had a Bookopoly TBR that doesn't always lend itself to spooky season, so I've always felt that I can't really like lean into the thrillers and the horrors and the fantasy romance and all of that kind of stuff. Whereas if I'm going to be mood reading, I can, but then I don't want to put myself in that box of like, I'm going to only read spooky books. So spooky season reading is definitely an option. I don't want to waste the opportunity of being able to mood read in October. But I also have a whole list of themed vlogs that I've wanted to make and I haven't been able to, and they're not super themed, so it's not like anything like super fresh, new and exciting, but it's stuff like I have a whole ton of arcs that I haven't read. Got the second book in a whole bunch of duologies that I've started, and I just need to read that second book and finish the series. Generally just want to be reading sequels, a couple of like secret things that would maybe involve friends, like ideas that I've got. So I was thinking of maybe doing any of those that I'm in the mood for. Possibly like a Bookopoly roll as you go week is an option for one of those. Or I was maybe thinking about putting all of the ideas that I have into a pot, and then at the beginning of the vlog drawing it out so I don't have time to think ahead and be like, oh well, on this day you can read this and on this day you can read that. I wouldn't obviously be able to plan ahead because until the vlog starts I wouldn't know what it was actually going to be, so it would be a little bit more spontaneous. And then there's just generally like I could just do reading vlogs, mood reading. Not everything has to be a themed reading vlog, and not every vlog that I make is a themed reading vlog. So yeah, those are some of the ideas that I have. Sorry I don't have a concrete TBR for you guys this month. I know it's very unusual for me, especially because I could have just gone in and been like, here's a bunch of spooky books that I want to read, but I want to mood read and I don't know if I'm going to be in the mood for spooky books, so we'll see what happens. I'm excited to find out anyway. Thank you to all of my patrons who have contributed to the selection of these books. It's a real, for a mandatory TBR, considering I really want to mood read, it's one that I'm actually really hyped about, which is great. So that is it for my October TBR. Please let me know down in the comments what you guys are reading for October. Are there any readathons you're participating in actually? Because I am not, which I've only just realized. But yeah, let me know if you're leaning into the spooky season vibes and what you're thinking about reading in October. But aside from that, guys, please don't forget to like this video if you liked it and subscribe if you wanna. If you head to my description box, you'll find a link to my Goodreads, Instagram, Twitter and Patreon if you'd like to find me on any of those, as well as link to my Bookish candle website, the Etsy for that, and a 10% off discount code. But that's it from me today, guys. Bye!
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you'll go where nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.